All right, we're live.
Hello, and welcome to Hope for Healing. And today we are having the conversations that no one else is having. This is the Unity panel. Oops. And we are uniting people across the spiritual spectrum to stand for unity, which is extremely important. I'm Akasha Rosewaters, founder of Inner World Technology and creator of the Inner Fit Method. Now, we're here because there has always been division in humanity, sadly, and in the last year and a half, we've seen it come to a head. And so we are here to bring healing to that division. And what better place to start than tapping into such concentrated spiritual energy that is existing in each one of these panelists here today and bringing that sacred spiritual energy right where it hurts, right to the wound. So that's why we're here today. We have people from different spiritual backgrounds and different philosophies. And yes, without further ado, we will begin brief introductions here in a moment. Most questions, well, this isn't, yeah. Most questions are going to be about 2 minutes. You'll have 2 minutes to answer. And unless we have more time, which we actually do. So we'll have about 4 minutes for certain questions and about two for the rest. So let's begin with our introductions. Dr. Michael, we'll begin with him. He has a retreat center and he does self-healing work, and I have been blessed to actually experience his work, and it is phenomenal, so much so that I actually share it with my son. And it just is amazing to have another pathway to eliminating desire and being able to be free from that and in an open space where possibility exists. And that's what Dr. Michael's work can do. So, Dr. Michael, tell us how you came into doing this self healing work that you do.
Well, my starting point was 6 days before I was delivered. My mother had toxemia, and they gave her Pitocin for 6 days, and they declared that I would not make it through the night. Called my dad, you better come see this kid tonight if you're going to see him alive, because he'll be dead in the morning. And I wasn't. The next 25 years or so, I lived on an inhalator and pills, and came to the point where I realized that while it was keeping me alive, it was killing me. And so I started to search for healing. And the work I've developed over the last 50 years of doing that is what I've come forward to understanding. My background's in naturopathy, doctorate in holistic philosophy as well. And it's looking at how this whole energy system works together and seeing that the energy system is just that. It's an energy system. So I do a variety of things looking to be as whole as possible. I distribute a couple of medical devices that support vitality, which is required in order for real healing. In order for people to break loose what they need to break loose, there has to be pretty strong vitality. I've synthesized several different disciplines: psychology, psychiatry, theology, and in particular the ancient Aramaic language. And that language, which is the root language of at least 5 of the world's major religions. And I remember being greeted by a rabbi several years ago, and when he heard that I was working with the Aramaic, he's like, "Well, that's where all our wisdom keepers come from. You're welcome to come in and speak at our Shabbat service," which was pretty awesome. Led to speaking in Fort Lauderdale. Actually, this is probably 15 years ago at the Holocaust Museum. It was a powerful place to talk about forgiveness. And that's the core of what I've come to with this work. And what my mission is to eradicate the insane ideas on the planet about forgiveness that pervade the whole culture. Those who live in a culture where everybody says, "Well, how did that make you feel?" As though something outside of you could possibly make you feel anything. And so the core of forgiveness, if you go back to the first century Aramaic language, has nothing to do with the Greek idea of "I'm going to let you off the hook for what's happening inside of me. I'm going to forgive you," which is basically what we're told in the whole Western culture. And in the Aramaic language, the word forgive represents a tool with which you go inside yourself and remove the root of your pain. If you're in pain, you need to go inside and do something about that. If you've ever said to somebody, "You make me mad, you hurt me, you really have a problem," The question I ask people kind of tongue in cheek is, if they're the one with the problem, why are you the one with the pain? Obviously, if you're the one with the pain, you're probably the one with the problem. And we live in a world, and we'll get into this idea a little bit later, where we have a mechanism in the mind with which we can hide things from ourselves and pretend that they belong to somebody else. Forgiveness collapses the part of us that hides what doesn't belong in our minds and gives us direct opportunity to access that content and remove it. That's the act of forgiveness in the first century Aramaic language. So that's what I'm about.
I love
Maybe this
that.
could take it to every mind, heart, and being on the planet. The last 40 years, my wife and I have traveled. I'm actually living somewhere for the first time in just over 40 years. Have been doing that for the last 2 years. My father-in-law became ill, and it came to the point where he couldn't be on his own, and we decided to stop traveling and be with him. He wasn't about to move out of his house here in Bristol, Virginia. And so we're here taking care of him, and our granddaughter, who's 34 months, been circling the earth, and switching all our work over to online work. We have a radio show that we do 5 days a week, an hour a day, for support, so people can be involved in the conversation. We have an app, forgiveness app, to use with kids, with adults. So it's everything we can do to put it out there on a global scale.
That is amazing. I seriously love everything that you do, and you have so much available for people to access, such as the podcast and the app and the worksheets and the books, and you have so much out there. And I really appreciate the work that you do. And you came from a place of basically imminent doom, imminent death was right there, and you were able to heal from that pain and from that trauma and pursue the natural path towards healing. And then it sounds like you stumbled upon almost this spiritual world, and then you just kind of dove right in. You were right at home, and you found your way into um, taking this wisdom and then distilling it down into knowledge that people could learn from. And it
My
sounds like
original work's in the field of electronics, and when you're in that field, it really doesn't matter what your philosophy is. If you build or work on a piece of electronic equipment, it has to work and comes off the other end of the bench. So everything that I've done is to bring it down to, here's something an action you can take. We have 20 different workshops. Each one of them's got its own worksheet, its own process. People can pick up, use, and our website's, I don't know, somewhere around 20,000 pages. So it's all there and it's all free.
amazing. Yeah, it sounds like your technology has to work. It's
Mhm.
effective.
Yeah, we tell people, don't believe a word I've got to say. Just try it
Yeah.
out and watch what happens. You don't have to believe anything. No belief required.
And that's the best kind of work there is. And also, it sounds like you really hear this word forgiveness thrown around, and people aren't getting how powerful that practice is of healing. And you have the actual technology behind the word forgiveness that can really bring about so much possibility and miracles for people.
Yeah, it took me 35 years of working with the first century Aramaic idea of forgiveness
Hmm.
to understand why and how it worked. I can remember in the early days when I first discovered it, was first exposed to it. I mentioned it in my workshops here and there, and it wasn't a big deal. It was just like it was there, and I never really used it. But people would come back and say, I've been doing that thing you've been telling me about forgiveness, and my life has changed. And after hearing that from several people, I started to move in that direction. Now it's, as I say, for the last 35 years, it's been the whole focus of my work, and understanding what it is, why it works, and how it works is what I think inspires people to use it. Otherwise, when you tell people, because it's totally backward from what the culture teaches, when you tell
Mhm.
people what it is and how it's done, they go, that's crazy. And it is, until you see the why and how of it. We'll talk about that in our next session.
Exactly. Beautiful. Thank you so much, Dr. Michael. And we're
All
going to
right,
shift.
Alistair's here. Yay, welcome.
Yay, he made
Hey, young man.
it. We're going to shift on over to Melinda. And I don't know you personally, Melinda, but from what I can tell, you are a magical being. You do yoga, you're a freelance rabbi, um, and your temple is your heart, which I absolutely love. And please tell us more about you and how you came into being a freelance rabbi.
Thank you so much. Thank you for the introduction and the invitation to share. I'll tell you, first of all, I never felt a calling to become a rabbi. I felt a calling to have a radically unique connection to God, one that my synagogue growing up wasn't providing me. So as a child, there was, okay, I'm Jewish, but what does that mean? I didn't feel it the way I needed to feel it. So at a time in my life when I needed to shift, I saw the roof blow off of my house in Hurricane Andrew and struggled with my two children and former spouse to stay alive during that period of time. Thankfully, it was a very fast hurricane. But after it was over, I went outside and I said, I know this was done for me. And I ended up raising my children Orthodox. We moved into a Jewish Orthodox neighborhood where I discovered my initial initiation to a meaningful, radically unique connection to God. For me, was being in the back of the synagogue with my book open every week, not gossiping, not catching up with people over what was going on in their lives. I had my head in the book, and that was for me very unique. At the time, I didn't realize I was actually using it as a bargaining way of, I'll do this for you if you'll do this for me, kind of thing with our Creator. And when my marriage fell apart and my relationship with God was really broken, it was really a very challenging, difficult time. I had been practicing yoga for a number of years. I had been practicing healing for a number of years. I had buried a lot of deep issues within myself that I thought the religious experience would take care of. However, at that time, it was really time for me to close a chapter of the way of relating to God, in which I knew. So I went on a path of unifying all the different ways in which I could find my God within, or goddess, or so many different names for it. And one day I received an offer, an invitation from a local rabbi who had offered the laying of the hands. It's called the laying of the hands. Was back in the 11th century. That's the way they made rabbis back then. They transmitted it, sort of like Reiki transmission, but this was more of I'm going to own something now, a responsibility. It's a different level. It was exactly what I needed, was my radically unique, beginning to develop relationship with God. So at that time, I received the laying of the hands, not like what they do now. Rabbis feel a calling. They go to study for many years. They become heads of synagogues and stand at a pulpit and do the weekly prayers and the daily prayers and the spiritual leadership roles. That wasn't, I didn't feel that calling. First of all, when I say freelance, and you say freelance, I mean, I couldn't have four walls around me. I needed to move. Part of my style and belief of Judaism is very much embodiment. And I found a number of different female rabbis in the Jewish Renewal movement. Later on, after I had received my smicha, my ordination, who were doing similar work to me. So in the beginning, I felt very alone. In Florida, there was a lack of inspiration for me of people who had trailblazed, women who had trailblazed through this way that I needed to express. And when I moved to California in 2012, for several years, I lived there and had my vision being lived out in other women's vision, and that made me feel like I belonged. So that was good. My radical self came back to Florida to serve my father and his last days in his body and doula his way into the next life. And shortly after he passed, I got this tickle inside me to start doing ceremonies, providing the ceremonies, life cycle ceremonies that is part of my calling. I don't call it calling, I call it, mission experience. That's how I got here.
Beautiful, Melinda. Thank you. It sounds like you have and I read a little bit about this too, about your journey, your deep reverence for death. And I think that that is so important to have a reverence for the impermanence of this body here, and also to have a deep reverence for God. And it sounds like you had you had a relationship with God on the surface. You were doing, the right things, but it wasn't as deep as you knew it could be. And so you took your journey very seriously, and you ended up doing what it was you were supposed to do so that you could deepen that relationship with God. And that is a beautiful journey.
Thank you. Yeah, and share it with others, inspire others, heal others. I mean, becoming a rabbi really healed me. It gave me, like the title of your this whole day, Hope for Healing. I mean, it gave me hope. It gave a lot of people hope. It healed a lot of people, including many members of my family who, know that people have come to me and said, I've never met a rabbi like you, and appreciate the openness that I can speak with you. So part of, one of my gripes with my raising my children religious Orthodox was, yes, my rabbis were very intelligent, and they shared with me from the perspective of the book, the written word. But I walked away feeling a little bit less than what I needed to feel. So it sort of was desperation to go, sometimes it takes a good deep wound and a deep cut to get us to pay attention. And I'm grateful for all the struggle, and feeling very more relaxed now, especially after COVID. Like we had to do self-care in COVID. No matter who we were, we had to find a way. So very fortunate to be able to kind of sit back and take it in and come through. So with my body in rising up from the struggle that many people haven't been able to rise from.
Sweet.
That's amazing. It also, I wanted to say, when you were talking about how your roof flew off, like what a sign, like, and Michael, you'll appreciate this because you talk about this. It's like the 2x4 just like smacking you to wake you up. That's Michael's thing. I took that from him.
Cosmic 2x4.
Well,
Okay.
also, I knew, though, part of me knew, because I wanted my son, who was about to go into preschool, to be in a school with other Jewish kids. And the neighborhood my spouse had found us our first home was in East Perrine, and the public school wasn't what I wanted, but the private school was too far of a drive. And being a creature of comfort, I was stuck. And his birthday was 2 weeks after Hurricane Andrew. So here I am, uprooted. And then I didn't find this home in Emerald Hills, Florida, Hollywood, until later on, after a couple months after we left our home. But as soon as I got there, I was like, well, this is perfect. I can just walk him over to the synagogue, and I can get him really close to, and he had friends my kids grew up with in that way, which is, it's a really nourishing way of life. It really is. I felt nourished up until I didn't. And then, like, it's time to change. So that's what I did.
Beautiful. Thank you. We're going to keep on moving right along here because of the time constraints. Let's go to Lincoln. Lincoln, he is a very powerful spiritual teacher who has really used technology to his advantage to spread the message of higher self consciousness, also referred to as the Holy Spirit. And yeah, I actually received a channeling from Lincoln like 9 years ago. He probably doesn't remember this at all, but it was very relevant in my life and it was really beautiful. And I'll never forget it. So, Lincoln, if you could please tell us how you came to realize that you were supposed to, or that you knew that you were going to share your gift of channeling higher self consciousness with the world.
Well, thank you for that kind introduction, Akasha. And I'm so happy that the channeling service has been able to support you at that time and continue to support you for the many years afterwards. So I'm very happy for that. I found my first spiritual book and actually was given to me the day after I graduated high school. So it marked one of these significant experiences, like Melinda's experience of the roof being blown off her house. The day after I finished my high school life, a spiritual book landed in my lap, and it opened me up to the reality of other dimensions and a really different way to look at my human experience. So that sparked something very unique. And even on the first day of reading that book, there was a light that ignited in the center of my chest. And I'll never forget that experience. It was really unique. I never had anything else happen like that before. It was like a small lighter flame, like a big lighter. It just turned on when I was processing this one sentence. So I was reading in this book and I was just flowing through the book and I understood what was being spoken. It was new concepts, but I could follow it. And my mind got stuck on this one idea and I knew I didn't grasp it. And I paused for a moment and I read it again and I knew I wasn't grasping it. And I read it a third time. When I read it the third time, I felt this energy turn on in the exact center of my chest, like by my sternum bone. And it felt like a little lighter flame. And it really caught my attention. And that light stayed on. And I would check in periodically throughout the day, every day, and that feeling stayed present. And it was really fascinating because it brought me, I didn't know the meaning of it, but brought me a feeling of significance, like there was something here for me. As I continued to pursue this spiritual knowledge, it really just consumed me. I changed everything in my life within that summer. So I basically stopped spending time with my friends. I stopped all my social activities. And I just decided to spend all my free time pursuing spiritual knowledge and practicing Zen meditation. So I would just sit in front of my bedroom wall and stare at this white painted wall and just allow myself to enter into a space of inner silence. So fast forward a number of years, I went to university. I changed my educational path. I was going to become a medical doctor. I gave all of that up and I really just focused on wanting to understand the nature of life. What's creating this experience we're having? Like I wanted to know why I exist, not what I'm supposed to do here in the world, but really how does this existence even come into being? What's creating the fact that I'm having an experience right now? And so I pursued what I call truth. So I wasn't necessarily following any religious path, but I studied all religions. I earned a degree in religious studies. I also earned a degree in psychology at the time. But I was really trying to pursue an understanding of reality. During this time, I realized it was really the most important thing in my life and had ever been in my life. And I wanted to share this with people, but I also knew I wanted to do it when I was ready. So I was around the age of 20 in college at the time, and I felt really strongly that this was my calling, to be a spiritual teacher or to facilitate the sharing of spiritual knowledge in some way. And I remember closing my eyes and speaking to God and saying, I feel really strongly that this is what I'm supposed to do, that this is the most important thing in my reality, and I want to share it with everyone. But I also know that I don't want to do it before I'm actually ready to teach. So I told the universe, bring me signs and make them external to myself so that I wasn't confusing any part of myself that wanted to become a spiritual teacher for my own personal interest. A number of years went by, I graduated university, and a series of events happened where I'd been channeling this universal consciousness that I call the higher self. It's like our oversoul, our Christ consciousness, our Holy Spirit. For me, as you work through all these different spiritual systems, you essentially arise at the same truth. And it's that we are God consciousness, and we're all working to ascend back into that full state of remembrance. So we're all returning to our unity consciousness. We are God that essentially put itself in a form-based experience of infinite expression. And essentially we kind of forgot who we were, but we did it on purpose. So we can go through that journey of celebrating our awakening back into unity consciousness. So I was channeling this higher self for a bunch of people where I lived in Sedona. And they would always tell me, Lincoln, what you do is really unique. You have this gift. But for myself, I didn't understand how important it was. I remember telling my friends, like, but it's just normal. It doesn't mean anything to me. It doesn't have any significance. Because as I look back in my life, I had this intuitive connection my whole life. I had dreams at the age of like 6 or 8 years old where I went into other dimensions and interacted with beings. I had a Kundalini awakening when I was going through puberty. So I had all of these really unique experiences going on. So channeling for me I didn't understand the significance. And also I was very introverted. So I didn't really understand how it would affect other people. I ended up recording the first time I ever channeled live. Just myself and a friend did it. And I put it up on YouTube at the prompting of my friends. And I thought, okay, that's the first sign, God, people want me to do this. And when I put it up online, I said to the universe, okay, if I'm supposed to do this, I want you to tell me. I want you to give me more confirmation. About a period of 6 months went by, and within a 1 week period, I got 3 different messages from 3 different people. And all of them were encouraging me to keep posting more videos. They were telling me how much they benefited from it. And so that really got the ball rolling, and that showed me that this is something that I'm supposed to be doing. At this time, I wasn't all in, but then I thought about it, and it's something that was really important, and I felt that it was something beneficial for myself to do and also for the world. One thing that I feel makes what I do kind of unique is also related to how I got started. I realized that I didn't want to teach from my own human mind. So I'm a pretty educated person. My mind works pretty well. And I wanted to teach beyond human concepts. I wanted to teach beyond learned information. I studied a lot. I knew a lot. I practiced it a lot. But I wanted something greater than myself. I wanted to offer something that was not just a normal human teaching. I didn't know what channeling was. I really didn't know until after it started happening to me. And then that's when I started to realize that there actually is something greater that does want to come through me. And it fits with that understanding I had a number of years earlier. And so I saw all these things just align in my life, and I knew it was right. So I went forward and did it. I offered free teachings for a number of years. It really wasn't until last year that I started requiring a minimum amount. And that's because I just got so popular and certain people were abusing that policy of, giving away teachings. And so I still post free teachings every week. I have over 2,000 YouTube videos. So you mentioned how I really use technology. The universe told me about YouTube. Like I saw an article when Google bought YouTube, and I had no idea this was around in the internet. And so like a few weeks later, I posted my video on YouTube. So it all kind of aligned. As I look back, I see everything was planned throughout my whole life, including when I was younger. I did like some public speaking, extracurricular activities, like a debate club. And I realized how that actually conditioned me to feel comfortable talking in front of an audience. I had dream experiences. Everything I was interested in spirituality kind of molded me into becoming a place of letting go and trusting this higher self to come through me. So I think all of us, as human beings, as we look into our reality, we see that there is a greater intelligence that is a greater part of us. And it's been aligning the different events of our life to bring us the experience that our souls are desiring to have as we all move towards unity consciousness and God conscious realization.
Beautiful. It sounds like you really had an organic journey, like you didn't even try. You just were like, all right, this is me, this is what I'm gonna do, and I'm just gonna do this next thing, and the next thing led to the next thing and the next thing, and it just kind of built upon itself. You didn't wake up one morning and say, I want to be a spiritual teacher. Like it just happened by you being yourself.
Yeah,
Which is amazing.
Yeah, very much did. I felt the most resonance with the earliest teachings of Zen, which are called Chan Buddhism, and then also Taoism. I studied a lot of different traditions, but those really resonate with how I want to live my life. And so it's very much about living in a natural way and living in harmony with the natural unfoldment of the universe. It's about trusting the design of life and trying to harmonize with it rather than trying to conquer it. And I think that's one of the problems that we're having in the modern day world, since we're talking about unity, is we're trying to impose our will onto other things instead of trying to discover the unity that's already here while we have all of our unique differences. I think that's one of the big challenges humanity is facing is how can we embrace all of these differences while also seeing them all to be a unity state of God consciousness.
I love that. And I want to talk more about that, but let's shift over because of time again to Alistar and get our introductions over with because we still have to get through our main questions. Alistar, so when I met you, you were a monk who was serving a very popular lama, if I remember correctly. And we had some great conversations. You had a lot of insight, and I just love your journey from that, and then taking everything that you knew as yourself, and then you actually became a householder and a father. And I love how you talked about the spiritual dharma or the purpose, the life purpose that is in that path, because I do think that sometimes that can be overlooked, the spirituality behind being a householder. So, Alistar, can you tell us about your journey of going from monk serving popular lama to farmer and father and husband?
Sure. First, can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Right. Okay. So as you probably all know, in the Buddhist tradition, the life of a monk or nun is a renunciate tradition. And in the old days, they were hardcore renunciates. They didn't own anything. They didn't have any home. No monk or nun lives quite like that today, and I didn't during my time. But the purpose is to create some space from the usual sense pleasures and objects of desire that have created some dysfunction in your life, the way that we relate to those objects and pursue our wants, our desires, and so forth. And combined with ethical discipline and a meditation practice, the idea is you get some insight into how to more functionally interact with the world. And it's not, being a monk or a nun is a means to an end. It's not an end in and of itself. And at a certain point, and that came strongly for me, is that there's growth to be had by re-engaging in relationship. And that's what it's all about at the end of the day. And, you can get quite attached. You can get kind of quite addicted to your nice, quiet, simple, uncomplicated, solitary life. But you're going to get really tested when you go back into the marketplace. And what greater test is there than relationship and family life? I mean, you really get to see where you're at. If you become a parent, you're really gonna confront any unresolved wounds of your inner child. In relationship with a partner and so forth, you're gonna continually hit up against where your limits are, where you don't want to give anymore, and all the rest. So family life is a very difficult path. But I'm learning every day. I'm getting humbled every day. But it is, if you can engage in it with some degree of skill, some degree of insight, then it really is an extraordinary arena for practice.
Beautiful. Thank you, Alistar. And it's so important. It is really, it is really, it's the workout, relationships are the workout. It's the gym. That's what I hear you saying. It's like, how do you know you can be enlightened all day, but put yourself in a relationship, put yourself around others in these interpersonal relationships, and then see how enlightened you are. And maybe you can hold that steady, peaceful place inside, but then also how to embrace the color, how to embrace the responsibility, how to embrace the pain, the limits, all of that beauty that comes with being a human. And that can go missed if we are on that renunciate path. And obviously that's a beautiful path. It's an amazing path, the Renuncia path. And it's a beautiful path to be a householder as well in a spiritual way from a place of responsibility. So I really commend you for that and for that bit of wisdom. It's very valuable. So we are going to move on to our next segment here. Our main questions, the reason why we're here, and we do have a little bit more time because our panel is extended. So this is good. We're not as rushed anymore. This is why we're here for these questions. And I'm going to swing back around to you, Michael. Well,
Okay.
actually, you know what? Not yet. Not yet. No. You're going to be third because there is a method to these questions. We're all going to create together with our answers, with the questions and the answers, and it's going to be this beautiful tapestry of unity. So I'm going to begin with Melinda. Is there a spiritual cause for what's happening in the world today?
How much time do you have?
So actually that's a really good question.
No, I'm saying from a perspective of.
I know, but I took it literally. So
Go ahead.
let's keep it 4 minutes and just see how good we can do with that. So each one of you will have 4 minutes to answer your special question. Okay.
So from the Jewish perspective, I would say there's twofold. There's the mystical perspective where we have several layers of our soul evolving. There's the connection to the several levels of the world, mystically speaking. But for all of us to understand the unifying message of what's going on in the world, I would say the first thing that comes to mind is kavod, which means respect. So Judaism teaches us to treat ourselves and others with respect. So in some ways, that's really where we have to start out. Can I be respectful in interacting with someone who has a different opinion? That happens all the time, and in every place that we're engaging. The second, I would say, core value as far as Judaism goes would be shalom bayit, which means peace in the home. How do we create peace in our home with the differences we have that could be right here in our home or in our workplaces? Third one would be B'Tselem Elohim. How can we be in the image of God? And we talk about this in Judaism all the time. We're all created in the image of God. So why is what this person's doing doesn't feel like God-like to me? We have to look at where they're coming from and step out of our needs for somebody else to be in the image of God. Another principle or core value on unity and what's going on today would be our community responsibility unto others. So where are we in the sense of supporting people who have less than needs than us? Kol Yisrael Aravim Ze Bazeh is really the phrase. So we are out there pounding the pavement like it's Pride weekend. So these are just my Pride earrings and my Pride necklace, which is also part of the priestly template that they wore back in the old time. But I'm here representing Pride in a way, just because I'm showing off in my rainbow colors. Another way of unifying what's going on today, Shmirat Halashon. What do we say when a person we don't like walks by to someone who we're with? Do we talk about them the wrong way? Or how do we use our speech? And speech hurts. So it's a wake-up call to be more mindful. Love your neighbor as yourself. That is something that everybody here in the world can relate to, I hope, and think that is a very big core principle. And I would say the last one is, how could we be more in solidarity with each other? How can we, we've been so isolated for good reason, but how can we be in solidarity with someone else when we've had to be so isolated? So the spiritual message now is, yeah, we're Zooming. We're all finding ways to connect. And so those values, I would say, are really the greatest puzzle pieces from the Jewish perspective of what's going on spiritually today.
Thank you for that, Melinda. So if I hear you correctly, you're saying that there are, according to what you have studied, there are certain things that when we embody, they work, and we are not embodying them lately, or maybe not even lately. Many times in human history, we have not embodied them, so things are not working on a subtle level.
It feels like right now a lot of subtleties are really being expressed in ways that people are learning to understand. And the more the understanding people steps into presence with those who don't, the easier it will be for all of us. So coming from, when you say what I've learned, okay, so I've just expressed the Jewish perspective because I took 7 years before I stepped up to do ceremonies and whatnot from the Jewish perspective, and had all these different other teachings within me that I really wanted to bring forward. But understanding what people see when they hear the word rabbi, they want to see, first of all, a male, second of all, a certain kind of attire. I go out in my yoga clothes all the time, but back to the where are we now is opening our eyes to our neighbor in a way that can support them in what they're going through is really probably more of a solution than a problem.
So holding that unity in your heart and in your mind, no matter what is coming up. That's what I hear you saying, which is,
well,
beautiful.
You have to be able to carry that weight. So if you can't carry that weight, it's going to go somewhere. I mean, you don't want to carry it like a weight that weights you down. You want to be able to, breathe into it and understand it. I think from the Kabbalistic astrology, my moon is in the Libra, so I have this balance. So I go from doing a funeral to a wedding to a baby naming, and all three of those are really impactful in so many different ways. And it's like, to me, people don't understand, how can you get up and do that kind of sad stuff? But I understand the channeling of the afterlife, and with that, a lot of people are grieving and they don't even know how to grieve right now, or work, or put food on the table. I can't imagine. I mean, I see it everywhere. It's just everywhere around us, and it's expanding, all over. It's hard, but it's doable.
Thank you for that, Melinda. We're going to shift on over to Lincoln for your question. But before we do that, Alistar, are you able, and Lincoln, are you guys able to stay past our initially agreed upon time?
Yeah, certainly.
Okay, because I already talked to Michael and he said he was. So, and Melinda, are you? Kind of? Okay.
Kind of, sort of. I didn't really know about it, so I have some other things happening right here in my home that need attention, and it's been a very busy morning, so I apologize in advance for not being able to stay on. Okay.
When do you have to go by?
I don't have a set time, but I can't stay an extra hour. So,
Perfect. So just set your boundary whenever you need to go. Okay.
You bet.
All right.
Of course.
Amazing. So Lincoln, what is your solution to what ails us on a world scale?
Well, I think the most important thing to realize is that every human being is essentially searching for the same thing. We're all trying to find happiness, and we're all searching for happiness based upon our past experiences. So we've learned different ways to feel safe and feel connected, and also to receive from the world what we want, whether it's physical things or emotional things, or even, mental things like ideas and understanding. So we're all searching for the same thing. And if we can keep that in the back of our mind, I think we can really get past this division that we have, in which we think we're fighting against each other, and there's like limitations limitation in the world and we're different than each other. We're so heavily conditioned to focus on the differences. And I think that's getting amplified in the world right now, so we can actually break through that. So right now we're bringing a lot of awareness into all the different lifestyle choices and the different racial experiences, and we're really blowing it up. And I think it's a bit chaotic right now, but I see it's all going to help us get to a place of better unity, because we're going to understand each other and we're going to become more accepting of each other. So right now, I see a lot of difference being put on stage for all of us to really ask ourselves, what do I believe and where do I stand with all these differences? And sometimes that can be a little confusing because it triggers our own wounding. Sometimes we see conditioning come up inside of us that we didn't even know was there. Sometimes we're picking up collective consciousness ideas and they're not even our own. So if we default back into this idea that we're all essentially looking for the same thing, we all just want to be happy. Right? How can we put that at the forefront of our mind? Because then we can start cooperating with each other. So in these experiences where we're trying to navigate our life, if we ask ourselves, right, what happiness am I trying to experience right now? We can then reframe ourselves and take ourselves out of the state of unconscious reaction and start to motivate ourselves towards more of a conscious way of expressing and responding. So if I want my greatest happiness, maybe it's being peaceful. Maybe my happiness isn't really getting upset with what other people are doing, because that's not really what I want to feel. I just want to be happy. And right now, happiness is peace. And maybe I look at you and I listen to you as you talk and I think, okay, how can I support that person's happiness? You know, they're telling me what they want. How can I be in alignment with that if that's possible? And if that's not possible, how can I then be in my state of happiness, which might then just be peace while they're pursuing themselves? So if we really get back to the beginning of why we're here, and that desire is creating this whole universe, in my opinion, right? The universe desires to have an experience. So form comes into being, and the forms desire to know more of themselves, which is a personal experience, such as more physical life, more emotional vibration, more mental knowledge, because we have these three bodies. And then also we want to know more of ourselves as a universal experience. So we grow ourselves personally by actually interacting and connecting with our environment. So if we look at the universe, everything is pursuing more happiness, right? More of itself, more physical life, emotional life, and mental life. So if I just remember that in the back of my mind, I can now have a different foundation from which I express myself. And then I find myself just automatically stepping out a lot of these constructs. When we look at our dysfunction, we realize we don't even want it. Like it comes up, it overpowers us. Later on, we regret it. We feel bad about it. We apologize for it. So if we can just try to bring with us something to focus us in every present moment, I think that it offers a lot of value. Yeah. So right now, separation is getting amplified. I think we really need like a tool in our back pocket that helps us stay focused on what we want so we can carve that straight path through all the confusion in the world right now.
Amazing. Amazing. I totally agree with you too. I hear you saying boundaries, just divine boundaries of what it is that you want and holding that to be your truth and standing by that and taking into consideration what other people want as well and opening up to the possibility, can I be that for that person? And if you authentically can, then do it. If you can't, you got to hold your own.
Yeah, boundaries are really important just because they organize reality. Without a boundary, there's no cohesion, so no structure can maintain itself. And if you take that on a universal level, everything will just fly apart. So we all have an identity, and that essentially creates a boundary in our mind. Like we separate the ideas that are true for me and the ideas that are not true for me. We have emotional boundaries, right? What makes me feel happy and what makes me feel suffering. So I want to exclude that from my experience. So we really do have a lot of boundaries. And the challenge in this world is how can we cooperate with each person when everybody has, a minutely different or sometimes a majorly different set of boundaries. So it is challenging, to try to live in a world with so much difference and try to live a unity path. And that's why I think trying to find concepts to put into our rational mind that help us identify unity is so valuable. So there's other ones. I know before the talk began, Dr. Michael talked about forgiveness a lot, and that's an incredibly powerful unity concept because, like he said, it removes the pain and suffering within ourselves, and that's the problem. Right? So that's a unity concept as well, because we all want to be free from pain and we all want suffering. We all want peace. We all want to know our purpose. We all want to feel connected to each other. So if we start looking at unity principles and just keep those in the forefront of our mind while we're living, we can redirect and reorganize our lives in really powerful ways. And we don't have to fight against any of our past suffering or struggle. It's more about just a replacement. It's taking a lower vibrational understanding and just replacing it with a higher vibrational understanding that's compatible in that situation. So we don't fight against anything or anyone. We celebrate. Melinda talked about the Pride movement right now, and that's really important because people are looking to feel recognized because they've been rejected before. So like parts of society are trying to bring themselves back into balance. How can I see that and support that? I may not directly understand what it's like to be in that experience, but I can look from the outside and I can see how they're pursuing happiness and how they're requesting forgiveness from mankind and how they have to reach forgiveness in themselves because they've had a lot of difficult experiences because of their style of living. And we've all had that. I think in greater or lesser ways, we've all felt separation, we've all felt rejection. So these core principles of unity consciousness are so important to embrace with ourselves and also to use when we support each other.
Amazing. And I also hear you saying empathy, having empathy and
Yeah.
compassion, that everybody is just like me in some ways. There are some core similarities that, such as wanting peace and happiness and
Yeah.
yeah.
And I think with empathy, it's real important when we look in this world that human beings create separation in order to learn. So you may know in your own life, or you may know other people as an example, where you keep pushing yourself into a position of more suffering and more suffering, more separation, until you have that breakthrough aha moment. And then you realize that core belief that you were acting upon that was ultimately causing your suffering. So I think what we're seeing on a global scale in governments and societies and social organizations and interpersonally in our relationships, as Alistar was saying, and inside our own psyche, is we're seeing that we sometimes go to these extreme places, right? We pursue illness in order to understand what causes health. We pursue argument in order to understand what causes cooperation. And so I think we're seeing that blown up on a massive scale. Like in the COVID experience, there's all this separation consciousness, don't talk to each other, stay in your home. And I think that that's helping us to see a way to get back to unity consciousness. Right. So these extremes of separation like open up a magnifying glass where we actually then have that opportunity to make a breakthrough. And when we're empathic, we can sense another's journey and then not condemn them for going deeper into these states. Because sometimes if you watch someone you love suffer, you might get triggered and you might get angry at them. You might try to control them and tell them how to do things different. And I think that that's not necessarily supporting them. When we're empathic, we can actually tune into their vibration and realize, no, they're going down a journey of self-discovery. So how can I support them in a way that I feel is best for this process? Maybe I don't agree with what they're doing and I won't share in their experiences because that doesn't work for me. But how can I still be an energy of unconditional love and peace and acceptance? And then also, of course, pray or work for the person's highest good to come out of their experiences for them.
Beautiful. Thank you so much, Lincoln.
You're welcome.
So we're going to shift on over to Michael. And this is your question, Michael. What is the remedy for hatred and division?
Okay. Well, first of all, I want to acknowledge you for the job you're doing on doing the panel. You're doing a great job. I can see you interviewing presidents.
Thank you.
Lincoln, it's in my mind of where does that accent come from? It doesn't sound like out there in the Western United States.
A lot of people ask me that. My accent has changed as I go more non-physical. My voice doesn't sound like anyone from anywhere. I'm from Pennsylvania, but my voice has changed a lot because I spend hours a day channeling and going into other states of reality. So my human system has completely reconfigured itself.
Sounds like a little bit of Irish in there, maybe some English or something.
Yeah, my ancestry is a little bit of Scottish and Italian and German and probably some other countries mixed in there.
Cool. Well, my offering would be that the reason there's so much insanity and suffering in the world today is that there's very little human life in the world today. It's been lost. People live out of a false self. People live out of a construct in their mind that's based in the pain that they've experienced in their lives rather than living out of who they are. You know, you've been in my workshops where the first question I ask people is, have you ever held a newborn? Anybody who's listening to us, have you ever held a newborn? Imagine yourself going into the posture, you know, actually put your hands up and imagine holding that newborn, looking in the newborn's face and tapping into the essence of the newborn. And then if I were to ask you to put the essence of the newborn into a single word, what would that word be? And my offering is that my wife and I, Jeannie, having asked this question of tens of thousands of people all over the globe, no matter what culture they're in, their answer is always some variation on the theme of love. And I ask the question, why is that? It's because everybody knows what human life is. We all start out exactly the same as this made in the image and likeness of love. This sweet, active presence of love is what we are. And Vladimir Lenin, probably responsible for more deaths in the world than anybody in the history of the world, said, if you want to destroy a culture, change the meaning of its words. So if we are love, can we do love? You know, if you go back and hold that newborn, is the newborn loving you or is the newborn love? Fact is, the newborn is love. And we live in a culture, we live in a world that knocks it out of you, oftentimes in the name of religion, and then sends you off to find somebody to love or somebody to love you. And now you're on a totally false journey. And life will never result in satisfaction if you're on that journey. When we change that dynamic and we start realizing who we are, then there's a work to be done. There's a generational pattern of what I call the non-being self, the self based in hostility and fear. And that hostility and fear-based self is literally a coagulation of thought disorders that are held within this physiological device called the body-mind unit, that when they coagulate, when they kind of come together and form this self that we look at in the mirror and think we are that body and we are that whatever it is, when we've been taught by the world to say, I'm angry, I'm sad, I'm afraid, we think that's who we are. And until that self is dissolved, you know, you go back to Yeshua, great rabbi, a couple thousand years ago, he says, in order for you to live, you've got to die. That doesn't mean put a gun to your head. The false self has to go. And the core tool, the missing piece, PEACE, on the planet is forgiveness. Again, we've been taught a false concept. We've been taught that forgiveness is about, I'm going to let you off the hook for the pain happening inside of me. Instead of, oh, I have pain happening inside of me, I think I'll get rid of my pain. We're taught to blame everybody else. You know, probably one of the greatest atrocities that we've had done to us down through the ages, and that we've bought into, is that we've had hidden from us the fact that we are by nature creators. You and I are creative beings, which is an idea everybody just loves when the creation's going well. But when it's not going so well, don't we always have somebody? And isn't their name always them? You got a them in your life. If they'd be different, your life would be better. Liar, liar, pants on fire. You'll notice if you've been through a particular painful reality 87 different times with 42 different people, you're the one that was there every time. It's about you. Alistair, I love the way that you spoke of it as becoming the householder and children. You know, my favorite tongue-in-cheek line about kids is that kids are like having your unconscious mind hang out in true living color and Dolby sound. Everything you've never dealt with, they're going to bring up for you, as is a spouse. Once you exchange genetics with somebody, which is what happens in intercourse, you know, they didn't warn us about the reason for not being promiscuous was because you're taking on literally the genetic history of the person you're intercoursing with, and you're handing yours to them. And now through resonance, you're subject to everything they do and they to you. They didn't tell us that. But once we link with someone, then they have access to parts of us that we've hidden from ourselves. And when we live in this world of blame, you made me mad, then in the context of the work I've developed, we call that denial. And what happens is when I go into denial, in order to believe the lie that my perceptual mind is constructing, that you're the problem in my life, I have to hide the truth of the cause of my pain. So the minute that I move into you made me, I have to dissociate from a part of my own mind. And then that dissociated part of my mind is literally not accessible to me, except when you come along and resonate that part of my mind. And since I'm in denial, I can't access it directly. So I now put it into my brain's image of you, and you show up in my mind with my problem attached. And I'm sure it must be your problem. We've been taught by our culture that we have eyes that are windows and we see out through those windows. That's a total lie. You've never seen anything in your life, and you never will. Eyes are a one-way valve. You can't see out of an eye. Information comes in via light, and that light energy, the information it carries, causes brain cells to fire according to what content you've got. And your brain generates literally, the world that you see through what you think are your eyes is a perceptual construct constructed by your brain. No light gets into the brain, no sound gets into the brain. Frequencies get there, frequencies cause brain cell to fire, and whatever's in there generates the world that you see. If you live in the game of blame, somebody else is the problem, then you see literally the content of your own mind projected into your brain's image of everybody else, and then you pretend that's outside of you. The number one project you need to do, if you're in that kind of a world, is you need to learn to forgive. And people say, oh, so I need to let them off the hook because that's happening inside of me again. The title of my book is Why Is This Happening to Me Again? You can go to my website and download it free. My website's whyagain, whyagain.org. And you can download that free. We've got a forgiveness app. You can go to your app store, Heartland Aramaic Forgiveness, the only app, forgiveness app in the world. And when you recognize that when you hide from yourself, you start to generate a false world. And that false world is a perceptual construct that needs to be collapsed. This is the piece that took me 35 years to understand about forgiveness. In the Aramaic language, the word forgive is shabag. It means to cancel. Shabag, shabak, to cancel, to let loose, to untie. And of course, in a given situation where I think you're the problem, I could cancel you. That's murder, probably not very wise. Or myself, that's suicide, not very wise. What can I cancel that's going to change what's going on inside of me? Well, there's some interesting Harvard research that says in a time frame where 10,000 brain cells are firing, literally there are 10,000 measurable units of electrical activity, the maximum amount of data that goes into your consciously generated perceptual construct is 9 bits. Little tiny, tiny framework. Now, obviously, if that's true, something has to determine which 9 bits of data are driving your perceptual construct filled with pain. You'll notice that unless you're a generally miserable person, you're pretty happy with most everybody all the time, except when one thing happens. What is that one thing that happens? They refuse to fulfill a goal for you that you have for them. You ever notice that? When they're not fulfilling your goals, that's when you go into pain, trauma, anger, fear, whatever the game is that you're playing. Whatever is, why is this happening to me again experience? Goals are the determiner of which 9 bits of data are served up as perception. When you cancel, if you're in a pained perceptual state, if you cancel the goal, and this is the core of forgiveness, if you cancel the goal, now somebody says, but Michael, I just wanted them to be nice to me. That's a perfectly good goal. Why would I cancel that? Because in your file on people being nice to you, there's a lot of pain. And when you load the goal for somebody to be nice to you, your pain's going to come up and you're going to put it into your brain image them, and you're going to think they cause you pain. Again, I remind you, you've been through it 87 different times with 42 different people. It's about you. It's not about them. Forgiveness in Aramaic is to look at the precise goal that you're holding at the moment. Cancel that goal. And when you do, your perceptual construct, based in unconscious pain, collapses. When it collapses, you get to follow it down and you drop into the root of your pain. When you bring your pain forward, we have a worksheet in the step before you bring that pain forward, you purposely, consciously set and activate love in your mind. And when that pain content comes forward in the presence of active love, it dissolves. And that's forgiveness. Nothing to do with letting other people off the hook. So my take is that's the missing piece. If we never acquire that piece of the puzzle, we just go from one insanity to another, to another, to another. And literally, it kills us.
Mm.
My offering is we're not designed to die. My background's from physics, electronics. And what I know from that study is that energy is the only thing that exists, and energy is eternal. If you substitute, what the theologians talk about as God, and the physicists talk about as energy, same concept, this omnipresent force that, and when we realize that, then you start bringing yourself closer and closer and closer to living as the presence of love as you remove the generational patterns of hostility and fear.
Right.
Does that go far enough? I mean, I could spend another 12 hours on the
I know
topic
you
if you
can.
want.
I know you can. And I would gladly listen. Sadly, we don't have that amount of time, but I hear you saying that forgiveness is the missing piece, and that's the remedy for hatred and division. So the kind of forgiveness that you're talking about, which I can't help but hear when you say goal, I hear desire as described in Eastern tradition. So desire, the root of all suffering.
Right.
That desire, which is distinct from Lincoln's desire, that desire, which is that divine desire, right? So we have that divine desire, which is like who we are. It's that love, it's that momentum of creation and going and going and going. And then we have that, the kind of desire you're talking about, or the goal, which kind of is in the mind, and it's in the mind, and it invites us down this path of, it's like a window and a path, and we latch onto it and we go down that path, and as we're going down that path we can't see anything else but that path, and it causes us pain and suffering because that's where it lives, on that path. And
Right.
so what you're saying is that forgiveness is kind of a release from that path, like even collapsing it, discreating it, and then there's nothing but possibility in front of us, and we can then carve our path or connect to our higher power and see which path is for us. And I could, yeah.
Break down that word desire. D is of, DE is of, and sire is father, of the father. Who is your father?
Mm.
If your father is that state of being, that state of love that Lincoln was talking about, then your desire is going to be creation. It'll be your creative process. But if it's of the false self,
Mm-hmm.
You go back to Yeshua 2,000 years ago, and he's talking to them about this exact principle. He says, your father's the father of liars. There's no truth in him. He was a murderer from the beginning. That's the self that wants stuff. That's the self that wants to blame. Desire. And then we can go to the creator, develop relationship directly with the creator, as Melinda was talking about. And when we have that relationship, then it's no longer something I have to have. It's just a flow of life and a creative process, and the removal of the interfering patterns from what I call carbon-based memory. If you look at this body-mind unit, they'll tell you that the base element in this body-mind unit is carbon. And if you look at the atomic number of carbon, it's 6 electrons, 6 protons, 6 neutrons. What mitigates against us living as human beings, as love, is carbon-based memory, 666. It's called the end. You've got the mind of Christ, which is the mind of love. Nothing religious about it. And pardon me, Melinda, because I know that word is one that's got great offense for a lot of people, but just that there's a mind, directly the mind of God is in us, and it's available. And if that's where we get our desire, things are going to rock. But if it comes from that other mind, we're in trouble.
Right. Beautifully put. Yes. And I didn't know that about the carbon and the 6. Yeah. It makes perfect sense. And then
we fill it with energetic patterns that are off the mark. Another word, this over the last 50 years of doing this work, probably the most common comment I get from people of that idea really changed my life, is the idea of sin. And we live in a Greek culture that sin's this evil, all this crap. The word is simply an archery term in Aramaic. When you're on the archery range and you fire at the target, you miss the bullseye, it means you're off the mark. That's all it means. It's an archery term. So when you think of sin as an energy that we engage in that doesn't belong in a device that's designed to incarnate love, And they said the wages of sin is death. That's not theology, that's physiology. You put enough energy that's off the mark into a cell, the cell's going to dysfunction. You get enough cells dysfunction, the organs are going to start dysfunction, and you're going to die. So the wages of sin is death was nothing to do with the threat. It's just, here's how the system works. And so when I realized that I'm off the mark somehow, and hostility and fear are just ways to inform me that I'm off the mark, and this belief that somebody else did it to me, and if I could only figure it out. We do a workshop called Codependence to Interdependence, and in that workshop I point out what I call the pseudo solutions of the non-being mind. And the number one pseudo solution, and in any room that I'm in, I say, okay, we got 500 people here. If we took you from the age of 4 to the day you are today, give me your average age, add everybody up and divide, we'd have the number of years that people have been trying to figure it out. You can't figure it out. You can forgive it. But the non-being mind says, if I could just figure this out, and people spend decades and decades and decades trying to figure it out, and they believe that somebody else did it to them. Nobody can make you mad unless there's mad in there. Nobody can make you sad unless there's sad in there. Nobody can make you hate unless there's hate in there. Nobody can make you angry unless there's angry in there. And anger isn't an emotion. Anger's a drug. It's an anesthetic to cover up pain. Forgiveness of the anger now lays open the pain. People say, well, I want to get rid of that because I'll have to feel this. No different than getting rid of alcohol or any other drug. When I start to let loose of that, when I become a non-unit, just like in AA, you can't have another drink. If you're an anger addict, if you're an hostility addict, you gotta let go of the drug. Then you're going to start facing your pain. And then if you apply forgiveness, you'll start dissolving your pain, free your pain. And then this 666 device becomes a place to incarnate what it was designed for in the first place: conscious, active, present love. That's what we're here for.
Beautiful. I hear you saying we are love, and when we're not behaving as such, then we're out of integrity with who we are. And when we're out of integrity, it leaves room for all sorts of afflictions.
Well, and there's another
in us or outside of us.
Yeah, there's another
Michael,
word to take. Oh, excuse me.
It's just that we need to shift to Alistar. If we have
right.
time, we can circle back around, but I want to get his, okay. Thank you so much. Alistar, so your question of the day is, what is it that we must do on an individual basis to see the world transform into a world of peace and prosperity and unity?
Sure, that's easy. No, thanks, Akasha. How much time do I have?
You have
I can keep it brief.
Yeah, I'd say go 4 or 5 minutes, just like everybody else. I want to hear your voice. You're here. You get to fill the space, fill the tapestry. Yeah.
Well, I think I learned a very interesting scientific fact that, well, scientists believe that around 70,000 years ago, during an ice age, the human species was almost wiped out, almost became extinct, and they think around 2,000 humans survived. And so all of, what are we now, about 8 billion right now, say? We all descended from those 2,000, whom we should deeply thank for surviving a very difficult time and keeping the species alive. But what it does mean is that literally, not just poetically, literally, we are all related. We all share common ancestors. We are literally one large family. And so we're all literally cousins. I think it's nicer to say brothers and sisters. But we're all, and here we are, we're all on this extraordinary piece of real estate, the best piece of real estate in the known universe, on this planet circling the sun. It just happens to be the perfect distance so that we're not too hot, not too cold. And all the other, almost miraculous physical causes and conditions that come together to sustain life here. And we're all sharing this planet. And the basic existential truth of our reality is that we share this planet together. We are all living here together. And it's not a metaphysical belief. It's just a basic fact of the human condition. And so we need to figure out a way to get on with each other. And the actions that, we're seeing this, for example, very clearly with the, with global warming. The actions that we are taking is affecting everybody. Now, it's not going to be necessarily felt equally. There's going to be people who can sustain, could be more resilient and be able to handle. But at the end of the day, we're all going to be affected. And try as we might to separate ourselves, we've been talking about these things, separate ourselves from one another. We have to keep coming back to the truth that we're all literally in it together. And we have to do our best. And it's a very confronting truth. And it's because there's a lot of human behavior that's very ugly. There's a lot of human behavior that's very unappealing. We struggle to get on with a lot of people, but nihilism is not an option. And when I was younger, I used to listen to a Doors live album. And you excuse my language, but I'm going to quote Jim Morrison because this is what he said. And I'm going to have my kicks before the whole shit house goes up in flames. And everybody applauds, they're all cheering him. It's Jim Morrison. But, that's not an option. That's not going to bring any hope or peace. And that's not going to provide any opportunity for healing and happiness and peace in the world. We have to do the hard work. At some stage, we have to confront our nightmare that we need to figure out a way to peacefully coexist with others on this extraordinary piece of real estate. And I think it's important, just finally, I think it's just very important to say, we can't be naive about the challenges that are involved in that. And we can't be naive about our expectations. And one of the many things that parenthood is teaching me is that, with one's child, we do our best, and we have this unprecedented amount of love for this child. We want to protect them. We want to keep them safe. We want to keep them from suffering. But at a certain stage, the parent has to let, as the child gets older, and certainly for a child to become an adult and to mature into an adult, which is what they need to become, and to fully experience life, we have to let them go. And they have to make mistakes, and they have to fail, and they have to hurt themselves. And there's no escaping the risk that is there in life, in relationships, in having children, and what might happen to them. And that's, if we can carry that wisdom with us, then it does make sense to keep an open heart for other beings, and to never give up.
Thank you, Alistair. I hear you saying to look at the problems that we're facing, or whatever challenges we're facing, or pain that we're facing. Look at it head on. Don't try to hide. Don't try to run. I also hear you saying that we are brothers and sisters. We're all related. And to carry that knowledge and that knowing in everyday life can give us a little bit of support when it comes to our differences, and when it comes to creating a world of peace and prosperity. So thank you very much. And at this point in time, I would like to let anyone who needs to go because I don't want to hold you here because we are over time. And if not, then I'd like to jump in. Okay, Melinda, do you need to go right now? Because I was just going to say we can jump into another question and whoever needs to go can answer it first. Or, and then everyone else can go, or what's there for you, Melinda?
So, well, I do need to go, but I did want to offer just a little, for me, appreciation and inspiration and maybe prayer-based connection. So what I feel like saying or what is supposed to be said is coming from the source of my ancestors and the spiritual realms that sustain us all. We look for support. We look for interaction. We appreciate the connection and the conversation that is that's happening actually within each of us who are brought here today, all of us together, whoever is witnessing and maybe not even scratching their head, but just holding their heart and taking it in to feel more, like you say, hope for healing. That's why you invited us here. My prayer for all of us is just that we were able to sustain our faith, because this is a world where faith is needed more than anything, and faith looks different. The diversity is beautiful. All of our stories are beautiful. They're there to be held and to be witnessed, to be heard, to be received, and exchanged. So I appreciate the exchange, as does my ancestors, for bringing them into this holy conversation. And I hope for all of you that you're nourished and continue to nourish your way forward in all that you do. And feel free to reach out to me should you desire or need.
Thank you, Melinda.
Thank you.
I really appreciate your space and you being here today. And you're so gentle and you bring such a feminine power to our conversation, and you are greatly appreciated.
Thank you, God, and God is blessed.
So, are we good to? Are you trying to figure out how to, Nathan? I think she's trying to figure out how to log off. If you would like to.
Yeah, I'll yeah.
Okay. I want to ask you guys an important question, and this doesn't have to take long. The question I want to ask is, if you had one request for the people of the world, what would it be? And whoever wants to go can just go. Just like go like this. And then you get, okay. Lincoln, what is your one request?
My one request would be for people to take a moment every day and enter into a space of silence. I think that what's needed right now for a lot of us is to connect within ourselves and to bring our attention inside our own selves and give ourselves that space of peace and stillness. And the way that I like to perform this myself, and what I offer to many others, is to feel your heart, because that's the center of your creative experience. My own personal experience is everything that we are begins as a light. I call it the light of God that shines from our heart. So we can very effectively connect to this state of peace by feeling our heart and just closing our eyes and relaxing into our own inner self. And so I know the benefit that comes from a simple experience like that. And I would like everyone to, try that. I think that'd be very beneficial for themselves personally and also for all of mankind. And really just spend as much time in that space as you feel called to in that moment on that day. So some days maybe you only have 5 seconds to do it. Your mind's kind of busy with other obligations. And other times maybe it feels so good you want to spend 20 or 30 minutes or longer in that space. So I think right now, with all the activity and all the movement and how much we think and how much we're expressing outward, that we really lost that peaceful center within ourselves. So just reminding ourselves every day that we have that, and making the intention to connect to our heart, to connect to the center of ourselves, would be very valuable.
Thank you, Lincoln. So connection, meditation, quiet.
Yeah,
Yeah,
definitely.
beautiful. And Dr. Michael, what's your one request, or Alistar, whoever, sorry. Whoever wants to go.
Well, my suggestion would be learn forgiveness. It's the key tool. As creative beings, life flows through carbon-based memory into the world. And if we're not incarnated as love, then we're going to play out whatever the generational patterns are. You look at that story about the Jews wandering in the desert for 40 years, and you say to yourself, wait a minute, these people, obviously they're very bright and they know about astronomy and they know where the sun sets and the sun rises. They're in a 35 square mile area. They got lost there for 40 years. Doesn't make any sense. When you realize that that word desert is a code word for the unconscious, most people are about 40 before they start to wake up. Lincoln, you lucky guy, that was right out of high school, man. Geez, I wish I'd had that one. But, most people are about 40 before they start to go, maybe there's something else going on here. And then you look at the resolution of that challenge in the desert was what? They said the old generation had to die off. That didn't mean everybody in old physical bodies had to physically die. The root of the word, Janari, generation, is to, in terms of what the practical application is, generation, Janari, means past causes. What causes are held in carbon-based memory that keep producing the why is this happening to me again experience? And learn to remove it, learn to forgive it. That's exactly what forgiveness is. And if you need support, this has been a pretty short conversation. If you need support 5 days a week from 1 till 2 o'clock Eastern time, you can call into our radio show, or you can watch it on the internet. But most people just call in. The call-in number is 563-999-3581. Call that number, push 1. You'll be having a conversation with me, and we'll explain all we can explain. There are hundreds of pages. We've got about a 20,000 page website that walk you through the whole process. Go to your app store and type in the words Heartland, one word, Heartland, Aramaic, Aramaic, forgiveness. You'll be looking at the World's Only Forgiveness app. You can do it right there on your phone. So learn forgiveness and apply it, use it. And the changes you'll see, monumental. And we're here to hold the space and support for monumental changes on the globe. It's definitely time.
It definitely is time, Dr. Michael. Thank you. And Alistar, what's your one request for the people of the world?
Well, first, may I second what Lincoln and Michael have said. Forgiveness, stillness, and then forgiveness. Forgiveness is certainly the F word, and it's a mighty challenge, and it's something in my life I've realized that's where I need to. That's the next frontier I need to explore personally for my own peace and well-being. So consistent, I think, with what's been said. I mean, we live such busy lives, and they're just getting extraordinarily more busy with. I was listening to Bertrand Russell, an interview he gave in 1952, and he was talking about the extraordinary technological changes that he had witnessed over the last few decades. I mean, look at us now in 2021, and the exponential increase in the pace of technology. And it's got many wonderful things it can offer. It's great in many ways, but it's also double-edged. And one of the reasons the life of a monk or nun or renunciate was considered so helpful for cultivating a spiritual life is just the sheer matter of time. When you've got a family, and especially in those days, you had big families because your children were your insurance policy, and with high rates of infant mortality and so forth, you had to, breed, families bred a lot of children. So the big issue is time and busyness. So we have to find a way to slow down, you know, and I do think that the media, including social media, we do need to be very disciplined with the way that we relate to that, and we need to be very careful about what diet we're taking on in terms of what we're listening to, and the news. You know, news is 24/7 these days, so probably switch off a little bit. That would be my recommendation. Ironically, we're doing this over Zoom, but it would be to switch off at least for a little bit each day, and take care of your mind, take care of your body, and access the answers that are within. At the end of the day, the answers are within. Yeah.
Thank you, Alistar. So stillness, forgiveness, and switching off social media, switching off media, being careful what we consume with our minds, huge. And also slowing down. So what I hear there is not really trying to take everything on.
No, be realistic about your capacity, be realistic in your expectations, you know, and, you know, protect your heart. So keep that open, and keep a loving, positive state of mind towards your fellow brothers and sisters as much as possible at all times.
Yeah. And thank you. And when we have that, like, it's easy to have that discernment when we find that stillness and connect to that all, you know, the source within us, that higher power, that higher self consciousness, the Yeshua, Christ consciousness, all of it. When we are connected to that divine desire, then we can easily discern what it is we need to be doing, and not overwhelm ourselves with all this, all these other invitations in the mind. So this has been a really great conversation. We're pretty much getting to the end of our panel. If you guys want, we can move into a breakout room for the next half hour, or however long you have. Yeah, what do you guys think about that? Do you want to, in case there's someone watching, the breakout rooms are available so that someone can talk to you if they are inspired by what you were sharing here? So
Yeah, so we each go
conference
into
is
our own
officially over.
breakout room. Is that how it works?
So we go into our own breakout room, and then if someone is there, then they'll be there. If not, it'll just be us.
I'm open to
Isn't
that.
the conference officially over?
Yeah, so we're gonna
Yeah,
wrap up
stay here.
here in a moment, and I'm suggesting the breakout room. You can come there or not, but I want to get a feel on all that.
Well, since this is the end of the whole summit conference, let me just share some final thoughts. And then, it was really beautiful what each of you brought, and also Melinda, who's no longer here. You know, I think this conversation is really ripe in the hearts of people. Like, I think people, generally speaking, we're peace-faring people, but we're caught up in all sorts of other nonsense that we're trying to understand, and all of you have shined a light on it in a unique way. And I want to just thank you for that, because I get each of your stand is to really live, to embody that message, and it's so authentic for each one of you. So thank you for that. That's really important and amazing. Eli, do you want to say anything to close this out? And then so I'm going to just say, stay here. We're going to close out the broadcast, but Eli wants to say something too.
I do.
Put these on. Get closer.
Hi, everybody. I just, hold on. Sorry. Wow. So I've been watching the different panels all day long, and it's just so inspiring. So there was so much that you all shared in this. Dr. Michael, your conversations around forgiveness, I've got to dive deeper into that. It's so inspiring. All of you, Alistar, the gentleness that you bring to things, and Lincoln, your heart that you're bringing up, how you bring your heart into everything. It's like, and you know, I'm just, not to sound hokey, but I'm left with hope. I really am. Like I'm inspired by your stands for what like really matters to all of you. And I'm moved by your willingness to put it out in the world and to be and to make it important to you. I'm reassured by the fact that there's that there's people like you out here in the world doing what you're doing. So that's it. I don't want to take up any more of your time. Thank you so much for all of you being here, and for everybody that's listening. Thank you for joining us. And I invite you to be on the lookout for the future of what we're going to be up to. See you all soon.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank